This is the natural drift of evolution, and its end result would seem to be the whole of humanity beginning to function as one single community. As well as this linking at a physical level, we are also beginning to link together at a deeper level. As a result of the information explosion, telecommunications, and the birth of computer networks, we are beginning to exchange information with each other wherever we may be. We are beginning to share our thinking. We are beginning to connect up mentally. We are beginning to link mind to mind. And as we begin to understand each other, an even deeper level of linking is occurring. A linking of soul to soul. We are beginning to appreciate our essential unity and oneness. So the next stage of evolution could be humanity beginning to link together, physically and mentally, beginning to work and function on many different levels as an integrated system. Now, there are some interesting parallels between this integration of humanity and the integration which occurred at earlier stages of evolution. If we go back and consider the emergence of life from matter, we find that the simplest bacteria contain several billion atoms. The figure shown here of 10 billion is only a very approximate figure. Whether it's 2 billion, 5 billion or 20 billion doesn't really matter. But it seems necessary to bring together approximately this number of atoms in order to create the complexity necessary for them to become a living system. Similarly, if we look at the next leap in evolution, the evolution of intelligent consciousness, we find it again takes several billion nerve cells linked together in the human brain to produce the reflective consciousness characteristic of humanity, though again the figure is not meant to be exact. Now, if this turns out to be a general principle of evolution, it would suggest that the next stage, the linking of humanity into an integrated system, would involve the working together of a similar number of minds. And indeed, the human population has already reached this level. We might then think of humanity as some sort of huge global brain, a brain in which we are the cells, linked together by our growing information networks. And there are indeed some interesting parallels between the way society is developing and the way the human brain develops. The main thrust of development of the human brain takes place mainly before birth, between weeks 8 and 13 after conception. Imagine for a moment that you are a nerve cell in this growing human brain. At first, there's plenty of space. Then, very quickly, there's a massive population explosion of nerve cells. If you were a nerve cell, you'd probably think, this is getting dangerous. There's not enough oxygen to go round. We're going to be short of blood soon. But suddenly, at week 13, the explosion stops. From then on, the development of the nervous system focuses on the growth of connectivity and complexity, the linking together of these billions of nerve cells. Today, we are seeing a similar process happening to humanity. We've had this massive population explosion, but it's now beginning to slow down. And we seem to be moving into the next phase, the linking of the billions of human cells in this planetary brain. Through postal systems, telephones, computer networks and satellites, we are increasing the connectivity and linkage of the billions of minds which together constitute humanity. Now, all that I've spoken of so far is the good news. The bad news is that our rapid development is also threatening the welfare of the planet. In some respects, we seem to be very much like a planetary cancer. It's interesting that if you take a photograph of a city from the air and look at the way the city spreads out into the environment, it's very reminiscent of the way a cancer grows in the body. This, for example, may look like Los Angeles from the air, but it's not. It's actually a cancerous tissue in the human body. But take a good look at it. Notice how it's growing, and then compare it with this. Now the similarity is more than just in appearance. If you go back and look at what causes the cancerous tendency in the individual, and at what causes a similar tendency in society, we find that underneath are very similar principles. Let's look first at why a cell in the body becomes cancerous. In the center of each cell are the genes. They contain the information that keep you functioning as a single living organism, rather than just a bowl of biological soup. Now, if the genes in a cell are disturbed, that cell may become selfish. It may no longer support the system as a whole, but instead go off, doing its own thing, at the expense of the body. In short, it becomes a cancer. Now, when we consider human beings in a community, we are looking at an organization of minds. And the parallel to the genes is to be found at the center of our consciousness. It's that deeper level of inner wisdom, that inner awareness of being much more than we normally experience, a part of something much greater. And when we lose touch with this inner wisdom, we also become like selfish cells, out of touch with the needs of society as a whole, living at the expense of each other. The philosopher Alan Watts referred to this selfish, isolated way of existence as the skin-encapsulated ego. What's inside the skin is me, what's outside the skin is not me. Biologically speaking, this is, of course, true. We are each separate biological individuals. But it is not the whole truth. We are much more than that. We are creatures with an inner life, with an existence that stretches beyond our biological identity. The reason we become stuck in this limited way of seeing ourselves is because the real self, our deepest sense of I, is actually very hard to grasp. Trying to describe that deeper sense of self is very much like trying to describe a hole in a piece of wood. If you ask people to describe a hole such as this, they may start by saying, well, it's a round hole. You say yes. They say it's a wooden hole and it's red. You say, hang on, the hole isn't wood, the hole isn't red. They say, haha, the hole is black. But no, that's the background. And suddenly they're stuck. What's the hole? How do you describe the hole itself without describing its surroundings? In a similar way, it's very difficult to grasp and define our own inner sense of self. Instead, we tend to describe ourselves in terms of what surrounds us. Our many possessions, the roles we play, our social status. Our beliefs, both scientific and religious. Now, this limited sense of identity may not in itself seem very dangerous, but it does have some far-reaching consequences. It turns out that many of the ways in which we mistreat and abuse the environment stem from our seeing the world as separate from ourselves. We may take fairly good care of what is inside the skin, but we don't care nearly so well for what is outside the skin. As the late Gregory Bateson said, if this, meaning this me versus the world attitude, if this is your estimate of your relationship to nature, and you have an advanced technology, your likelihood of survival will be that of a snowball in hell. You will die either of the toxic byproducts of your own hate, or simply of overpopulation and overgrazing. And Bateson went on to say that if I am right, the whole of our thinking of what we are and what other people are has got to be restructured. The most important task today is to learn to think in a new way. I would actually go a step further and say the most important task is to be in a new way, to experience, to be conscious in a new way. We need to make the shift from this, the skin encapsulated model of the self, to this, what some have referred to as leaky margins. The boundaries are still there, but they are much less solid. In addition, we now experience a greater oneness with the world outside. Such a shift of consciousness could play an important part in the next stage of our evolution. If we go back and look at the previous major steps in evolution, we can see that each stage became a platform for the next. Energy led to matter, matter led to life, and now life has led to consciousness. Thus the spearhead of evolution is now the human mind. We have moved beyond biological evolution into mental evolution. Thus it is not changes in our bodies which will now determine the future, so much as changes in our thinking, changes in our perception, changes in our attitudes. The evolutionary phase which we have now entered is the evolution of human consciousness. Inner development is now the key. In short, evolution has become internalized.